Hey everyone, well I got the Twin Otter here on floats. I want to give you guys a couple tips on how to install the floats on your Twin Otter. So the first step, of course, is just to go ahead and assemble the floats off the airplane. So you'll have the two pontoons, you have like two outrigger struts here, and then there's a joiner or a spreader bar that goes in between. So you just follow the instructions. It's pretty easy. There's nothing really surprising about that. Now, the tricks come in is when you install them on the airplane. So the first thing you're gonna wanna do is inside the battery cover here, there is the airplane over here. There are two retainers that are inside here, located right there and there. You're gonna wanna take those off first. So you're gonna wanna get those and remove them from the airplane kind of as a first step before you even get started on anything else on the airplane. Go ahead and just take those off and set them off to the side. And the next step is to go ahead and flip the airplane over, remove the main landing gear cover and the main landing gear. And there's three plastic tabs or little retainers that hold those in. You want to move those out of your way and don't lose any of the screws. And then there's a single screw up front that retains the front landing gear. You just undo the screw and the nose gear drops out. Now, when it comes to installing the floats on the plane, this is one of my recommendations, and I learned this a little bit the hard way. So when you put the floats together, go ahead and tighten down the rear floats completely on. So the pontoon, the spreader bar, and the little outrigger piece, go ahead and tighten those all down to get started. Leave one side of the front loose, maybe just do a few threads into it, and go ahead and remove the strut from the opposite side. So what you end up with is almost like a tripod. You have the two in the back and you have one up front. So with the airplane flipped over, go ahead and put the floats on here and install the rear floats first. They use the same little plastic retainers that the main landing gear do. So you put those in, screw those all down, and then you can go ahead and put the, well actually before you do that, put the push rod. It's easier that way. Just put the push rod onto the nose gear so you have steering of the rudder. So go ahead and do that, then go put the rear struts into the airframe, tighten those all down, and you go ahead and put the cover back on. Those are all done. So with this set up the way it is, you have one strut that's installed that's loose and one strut that's off the airplane. So you go ahead and take the one that's on the airplane, and you want to slide it through that hole, and you want to place it just above the balsa wood floor. Take the other strut, slide it in so that it's also between the balsa wood floor and the small hole, and then you just kind of rotate it into place. And because the whole front area is loose, you're allowed to kind of pivot and move things around and get the strut assembled on the opposite side. And once you get that installed, go ahead and flip the airplane back over. Once again, the front is still loose, so you want to keep it that way, but now all the struts are installed. Let's flip this thing over here. So then put it on a nice level flat surface. I made this little bench here to help me out. And then what you do is just make sure that the airplane is level. The pontoons are level, make sure your wings are level, and then you can go in and from the battery compartment, go ahead and put those plastic retainers in place and tighten down both your struts. And as you do that, just kind of check to make sure that the airplane is still staying relatively flat and parallel. And the reason you want to do that is because you can kind of load the airplane one way or the other inadvertently by tightening those down without checking it. So you just want to make sure you do that. Just kind of check, make sure everything is flat and parallel. That way when it sits on the water, the airplane is sitting flat as well, which is exactly what you want it to do. So that covers the float installation. To get these little plastic pieces on, what I did is I actually used just a little bit of CA adhesive and just put a little bit on the back side. I don't know how long that's gonna last. It obviously worked for a maiden flight just fine, so there may be an opportunity there that solution will work. Otherwise, the fronts kind of spin around and the rears kind of rattle a little bit. So you can just glue those into place a little bit and you'll be fine. So that covers the installation on the airplane, but there's a few other tips and tricks that I've learned over the years of flying float planes that come in handy. So on the bottom of the float, I actually have sealed the base with a clear tape. I actually use this crystal clear waterproof Gorilla tape. It works really well. It's pretty thick and strong. So I run that along the entire bottom. It gets a little tough up in the front here with this the compound curvatures and everything. So be aware of that. It is easier if you apply this from the rear forward. That way, when you have any gaps, you're actually kind of the rear piece, the trailing piece, and the leading edge go like this. That way, the water will shed underneath of it rather than getting caught up. So just a little trick there. It's a little difficult to work on up front, but for the rest of this, it goes pretty well. That also works great if you end up having to taxi on up onto a sandy beach or taxi in the grass. It helps keep the foam from abrading. It also adds a little bit of rigidity to the float. Now, once you do this and you have your floats on, go ahead and put your battery in and recheck your center of gravity. Depending on how much of this you use, there's a good chance that you will have altered the center of gravity rearward. So on this particular model, I added some Clearcoat to it. I added the tape to it. I moved the 2200 all the way forward, and I still needed just a quarter ounce of weight in the nose just to kind of get it to balance properly. It did not need any weight before I put the Clearcoat on it. A lot of times when you clear the back half of an airplane, because of the amount of room there is back there, you will alter the center of gravity just a little bit. That's with a 2200 3S. That's the only battery that this particular model, this particular Twin Otter flies on. The Twin Otter can fly on a couple different batteries, but this one here is set up to fly just on 2200. So if you have other batteries, obviously check your center of gravity. And what I do is I mark the center of gravity with two different color pens. If I'm flying with the landing gear, I have a black line that's drawn inside here for the gear, and I used a silver line to denote where the battery goes when you're flying off floats, and then I put a little note on the back side of the cover there. Another little trick to help with the airplane getting off the water, and kind of if you have to taxi on the grass at all and you want to make sure the thing scoots along really well, try this. This is Meguiar's liquid hybrid ceramic wax. It's awesome stuff for your car, but it works great on float planes too. So I put just a thin layer of this on the bottom of the floats, and it makes it really slippery. It actually beads up the water. So it helps with the airplane to get off the water a little bit quicker. And if you have to taxi on the grass, it works fantastic for that as well. I had no issues the other night taxiing this thing on the grass. You don't want to go too far with it because the rudder isn't spring loaded. But I needed to get it at least to a point where I could recover the airplane without getting my shoes too wet. And that brings you to your final trick is wear waterproof shoes, sandals, or have some other way to retrieve the airplane. If you can taxi up to a beach and just reach down and grab it, that's fantastic. That's the best way to go. That's not always the way your environment is going to be. We flew this at our club field, which is just flooded. So the water, you can go through about 6-8 feet of grass in which the water is over your shoes before you actually can get to the airplane. And the airplane is already sitting in the grass. It's because the grass is probably 4 inches tall and the water is probably 4 inches deep. So it looks as if it's all grass, but in reality, it's all water. So wear some water shoes and have a backup plan on how you want to get the aircraft retrieved just in case anything happens. So plan ahead, then you won't have any surprises. But that covers it for some tips and tricks on installing the floats on the Twin Otter, and as well as some other things that I've learned along the years on how to kind of make float flying a little bit easier, a little bit more enjoyable. And I'll tell you, once you start flying on floats, you'll find out you want to put everything on floats because it's just that much more fun. So if you guys got any questions, by all means, leave them in the comments below. Subscribe. We'll have more content coming. It's now RC flying season. The winter is over. So we're anxious to get out there and get some more flights in. I got a whole squadron of airplanes ready to go, and I've been having a lot of fun with the Twin Otter so far. So we'll talk to you guys next time.